Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a really big one of the most significant changes to India's employment laws in a long time, the Code on Social Security 2020. We're going to break down how this single code plans to turn a tangled mess of old rules into one system for almost 500 million workers.
So, have you ever tried to figure out Social Security in India? Things like your Provident Fund, gratuity, insurance. If it felt like you were trying to solve some kind of giant, impossible puzzle, well, you are definitely not alone. For years, the system has been famously complex.
And here's the thing. The core of the problem was that the old system wasn't really one system at all. It was more like a patchwork. For decades, workers and their employers had to find their way through this confusing maze of separate and often conflicting laws.
I mean, just take a look at this list. Before 2020, Social Security wasn't one law, it was 9. And each of these had its own separate rule book, its own requirements. If you were a small business, just trying to stay compliant was a total nightmare. And for a worker, good luck trying to figure out what your rights even were. This fragmentation, that was the big headache. Okay, so to fix this huge mess, the government brought in the Code on Social Security 2020. The whole idea was pretty simple, really. Take all those confusing, winding back roads and merge them into one single, clear highway for everybody. And you don't have to take my word for it. The purpose is right there in the opening lines of the Act. The key words to focus on here are amend and consolidate. This wasn't just about a few small tweaks, it was about rebuilding the entire foundation. And, maybe most importantly, to extend that safety net to cover everyone. So let's just boil it down. We go from 9 separate, confusing legal documents down to 1. That single move is designed to make the whole idea of Social Security way simpler to understand, easier for companies to comply with, and actually accessible for the millions of workers it's there to protect. All right, so this brings us to a really important question, right? Who exactly does this new, simpler system cover? Well, this is where we see one of the biggest changes, because the definition of who counts as a worker just got a whole lot bigger. This is a huge deal. For the very first time, the law in India is formally recognizing and including the millions of people who are part of the gig economy. Think about that. It's a massive step forward, bringing a whole new segment of the modern workforce into the Social Security fold. So, what do they actually mean by a gig worker? Well, in the eyes of the law, it's pretty much anyone working outside of that classic boss-employee relationship. This could be a freelance designer, an independent consultant, anyone who takes on projects for different clients. It's a formal nod to how so many people work these days. And the code also gets very specific about platform workers. This is another massive group, covering anyone who uses an app or a digital platform to find their work. We're talking ride-sharing drivers, food delivery partners, or people offering services on online marketplaces. And finally, the code includes this enormous group called unorganized workers. Now, this is a really broad definition, covering everyone from people working from home to those in very small companies. These are the folks who have traditionally been the most vulnerable and had the least access to any kind of safety net. Okay, so the safety net has definitely been widened, but what's that net actually made of? Let's take a quick tour of the key benefits that the new code consolidates. This table really lays it all out. We're talking about the big ones: retirement savings through the Provident Fund, end-of-service payments with gratuity, and, of course, crucial health and maternity benefits. Before, you'd have to look in 9 different places to get your head around all this. Now, it's all part of one single system. And here's something that could be a real game changer for those newly included workers. The code doesn't just name them. It actually gives the central government the power to create brand new Social Security schemes just for them. This could mean things like life and disability insurance, health and maternity benefits, the whole shebang. So let's zoom out for a second. What's the bottom line? Why does this big shift from 9 laws down to one single code actually matter to you, whether you're an employee, a freelancer, or an employer? And this slide really says it all, doesn't it? We're moving away from a system that was fragmented, incredibly complex, and left millions of people out in the cold. The goal of the new code is to be unified, much simpler to deal with, and to cast a much wider net. So for traditional employees, this should mean a clearer system where your rights are easier to find and understand. For gig and platform workers, this is historic. It's that first official step toward a real social safety net. And for employers, well, the goal is simple: one rulebook instead of 9, which should make compliance a whole lot less of a headache.
And when you look at the big picture, the ambition here is just enormous. The Code on Social Security aims to create a protective umbrella for a workforce of nearly 500 million people. 500 million. It's a huge attempt to modernize India's social contract for the 21st century economy. So the legal framework is now in place. That single highway has been paved. But the ultimate question remains, and it's a big one. How well will it be implemented? Will this ambitious new law truly deliver a strong, reliable safety net for every single worker across India? Well, that's the chapter that's still being written.